The best of Money Matters. The Big Story.
Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Hongbin, Jeong. Israel launched an unprecedented airstrike in Doha, Qatar, targeting Hamas leaders who were reportedly meeting to consider a U.S.-brokered ceasefire proposal. The attack killed several aides and bodyguards, but Hamas insists its top leadership survived. What has fueled controversy is not only the strike itself, but the question of who knew and when. The White House insists President Trump directed an envoy to warn Qatar in advance, but Doha flatly denies receiving meaningful notice, saying the call came only after explosions had already begun. Washington is also scrambling to distance itself from the incident, with President Trump describing the incident as unfortunate, while allies across the Gulf openly question America's credibility. So where does this leave U.S. diplomacy in the region? How will Qatar respond to what it views as a breach of sovereignty? And has Israel's gamble ultimately weakened its position in the conflict? Well, joining us today to share more is Professor Shahram Akbarzadeh, who is the Director of Middle East Studies Forum at the Deakin University. Hi, Professor. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Professor, this unprecedented attack by Israel against Hamas leadership in Qatar, what do we know so far?
Well, we know that Israel has decided to attack a very close U.S. partner in the Middle East and take out Hamas leadership, political leadership, who were involved in discussing the latest U.S. ceasefire proposal. So this is a very significant and dangerous turn of events. It is putting the whole region on a very, very dangerous line.
I mean, it looks like the White House insists that President Trump directed an aide to warn Qatar shortly before the strike. But Qatari officials deny receiving meaningful notice. In fact, the call from the U.S. came 10 minutes after the attack began, according to Qatari officials. So what do you think really happened here, Professor?
Well, I'm not quite sure whether we will ever know the actual sequence of events, whether President Trump was advised early enough to alert the Qataris. But we do know that President Trump has basically bought into Netanyahu's narrative of what should happen in the Middle East and has basically given Netanyahu a carte blanche to carry out however he sees fit.
Well, if what Qatari officials have said is true, how is Qatar likely to interpret this delay?
Well, I think Qataris have been very clear about this. They have called this a blatant act of aggression and a violation of their sovereignty. Clearly, President Trump's reaction of calling it is a very bad thing to happen is interpreted in Qatar, in Doha, as insufficient and completely out of touch with the reality of the experience. Qataris depend and rely on the United States as their major, security protector. That confidence in the U.S. is now shattered. Qataris can't look at the United States and assume that the U.S. will come and protect their security. This is a completely unexpected for Qataris.
Definitely. I mean, this is kind of like a he said, she said scenario. So does this contradiction suggest, mismanagement within the U.S. government, or could it even be a deliberate spin to protect Washington's image?
I think the he said, she said story is really a side issue. What is important to consider here is that the United States has basically given up on conducting its own Middle East policy and given it up, outsourced it to Israel. It has taken a back seat and is allowing Israel to pursue its own agenda. And when we say Israel, it's really Netanyahu who is really pushing Israel in that far-right direction, stoking war and conflict in the whole neighborhood. Not just to try to destroy Gaza and committing acts of genocide in Gaza, but attacking its neighbors in the north, in Syria, further away in Yemen. So, as I mentioned, the United States image as a superpower and protector of security for many Gulf states is now shattered.
Well, another thing, though, if the White House did know about the strike, why didn't the U.S. try to stop it?
Because the United States feels that it is basically powerless when it comes to Israel's priorities. the United States, especially the Trump administration, feels that Netanyahu knows best. Netanyahu's narrative of who is friend and who is enemy is the right narrative, and the U.S. simply goes along with that narrative.
Okay. I mean, it looks like President Trump has also sought to further distance himself from Israel's attack in Qatar. Has this strike become a joint responsibility with the U.S. as well? I mean, how are allies viewing it?
Well, basically all of the Gulf countries, the Arab Gulf countries, have pointed to Israel as the aggressor. They have all expressed dissatisfaction with the United States for not stopping Israel. And when you say allies, I assume you're looking at European allies. Many of European powers have also condemned the attack, but the surprising thing, I guess, is that many such condemnation from Europe are not taking it far enough. They are not taking Israel to account. They are not asking for a UN discussion over Israel's behavior. They are not asking for sanctions against Israel. Just imagine if it was any other state going out unprovoked and attacking another country, there would be an international uproar. There would be upheaval. There would be calls for accountability. None of that is happening among the Europeans, which sends the message of hypocrisy to Arab states, and that is really unsettling for the global order and for the region.
With how the Gulf states are now viewing the U.S., is Trump distancing himself at this point effective?
I don't think so. I don't think people take Trump's denial seriously. The fact that he just says he feels badly about it tells you that he did know about it and he didn't do anything about it.
Well, the strike has shaken the U.S. standing in the Gulf, as you mentioned, and Qatar, which has long been central to American operations and diplomacy, now questions Washington's reliability as well. Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they're, already hedging ties with China and Russia, may see this as a turning point. So do you think that the strike was a reckless gamble, not only for Israel, but also for America's credibility?
Well, it was a very reckless act. Whether it was a gamble remains to be seen. It was reckless because Israel violated international law. It hit a close ally of the United States. It undermined U.S. initiatives for a ceasefire in Gaza because now Hamas is not going to engage in ceasefire negotiations. So it was definitely reckless. And you're right in saying that many Gulf countries now look elsewhere, are basically forced to look elsewhere for their security. Because if they put all their eggs in one basket, well, that seems to be a bit of a risky proposition. The U.S. is not reliable. When push comes to shove, U.S. is prepared to look the other way and allow its partner, Qatar, get hit. So China, obviously, has been investing in the region. Russia is looking for opportunities and openings. So this could be that opening for Russia and China.
President Trump, as you mentioned earlier, described the incident as unfortunate and stressed it should not be repeated. But, the damage has already been done. So with Qatar having been a key mediator in Gaza ceasefire talks, has the relationship between the U.S. and Qatar been strained now?
Well, the relationship will be strained now, and Qataris will be questioning whether they should continue as mediators in the conflict in Gaza because they just cannot. There's no confidence and no trust in U.S.'s commitment. That's going to be a big problem for Qatar. A lot of rethinking is going on in Doha at the moment.
So what can we expect in the next couple of days? Will Qatar retaliate, and what will be Hamas's response?
Well, in the next couple of days, Qatar is going to appeal to international agencies, to the United Nations, and ask for some kind of accountability, knowing full well that nothing will happen, but they have to try. Qatar is not going to do anything beyond diplomatic response. Qatar is not going to engage in military act against Israel. Qatar is not that kind of a state. So a diplomatic push to keep Israel accountable, and also conveying to the American partners in Washington how disappointed Qatar is with Washington's willingness and, acceptance that Qatar will be hit. That's going to happen in the next few days. Hamas clearly is going to close all doors to negotiations because why would they engage in ceasefire negotiations when their negotiators are hit and assassinated?
Well, thank you so much for that analysis, Professor.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That was Professor Shahram Akbarzadeh, who is the Director of Middle East Studies Forum at Deakin University. This has been The Big Story with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.